Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dead Barbecue, and today we're covering why I think pre-made rubs are the biggest scam in barbecue. So we won't be needing these anymore. It's actually really expensive. One sec. Can you believe that little illustration was worth over $300? There's something seriously wrong when the seasoning that we're putting on our food costs more than the grill that we're cooking on it. And that's one of the challenges with YouTube, is some of my favorite channels and some of the most popular videos on this platform are owned by people that either create or sell these rubs. And you'd be given the impression, if you watch them, the only way you can be successful at home is if you follow the link at the end of the video and buy the rub. This just isn't true. We don't walk into a restaurant and pick on an example here, look at the menu and say, I'll have the hardcore carnivore black steak, please. You rely on the chef and their staff to be able to blend the ingredients together to complement each other and make an amazing tasting meal. The other challenge is these rubs work for packaging where it can come in a nice shipping package, but this just isn't how our tongue perceives flavors best. We can decipher flavors better in layers rather than everything all blended together. Even though it's all going the same place, it just doesn't taste the same. Don't believe me? Watch this. So to prove what I mean, I have a simple demonstration planned. In front of me is a Big Mac, some fries, and some Coke. In front of me here is a Big Mac, fries, and Coke. The only difference is we've gone from all the ingredients blended up and mixed together, which is Big Mac number one, versus the layers. And this tastes like a Big Mac. Now, let's see how this tastes. That was the grossest thing I think I've ever done. And the third and final reason is also related to packaging, which is clumping. And so even though there's additives and preservatives and a whole bunch of other things added to stop the clumping effect, after a little bit of time in storage, they start to clump together. And this is completely skipping over freshness. So if you order on Amazon, I don't know when this was originally packaged, how long it sat in Amazon's warehouse or a barbecue retailer to eventually it makes it to my house to when I can eventually get it on the food. And this goes completely against how spices work in terms of delivering the best impact. So typically, if you make something, grind up some fresh pepper, you want to consume that within 30 days. And some of these rubs I've had in my cupboard for far longer than 30 days. So freshness is a big part of it. So let me break down the three topics that we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to go over some common mistakes it comes to when seasoning your food. Second, I'm going to share some best practices that help address all of those mistakes. And to set you up for success, I'm going to share 3 starter rubs that you can make at home using ingredients from your local grocery store that will absolutely blow your socks off. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with mistakes, and it's okay, we all make them. But there's 3 reasons that we season our food in the first place. The first is to enhance the flavor. It's amazing if you've ever tried dry brine, something as simple as just adding salt 24 hours in advance, how much something like that simple step can unlock the natural flavor of whatever we're cooking, whether it be fish, chicken, beef, pork, you name it. The second reason is to enhance color and presentation. Let's say if we were going for ribs, for example, we want that beautiful mahogany color, or if you're doing brisket and you want that standout bark that just looks absolutely fantastic. We eat with our eyes, and so how things look is a big part of it. And the third and the final reason is aroma. And so even though there's really only 5 kind of basic tastes that our tongue can perceive, our nose can detect thousands. And so how we build these flavors that we can taste as well as the aromas that we can smell really go a long ways to enhancing the overall experience. So what are some of the most common mistakes that people make when it comes to seasoning their food? Okay, so there are many mistakes that we can cover, but today I'm going to cover my top 4 because I think they are the biggest ones that will make a massive difference in the cooking that you're able to do at home and appreciate. So the first one is salt, and this is salt type as well as the quantity of salt. And ask me how I know about this one, but my first experience was doing the overnight dry brine with salt, but didn't appreciate the difference in salt. So I used a refined table salt instead of what I've now learned has the least amount of sodium by volume, which is something like Diamond Crystal kosher salt. And that is the 100% the salt that I use for my dry brines overnight. So mistakes number 2 and 3 go hand in hand together, so I'll address them all at once. And so this is buying buying pre-ground spices. And so Costco loves selling things in bulk, and it's a tremendous value. But if you're a restaurant and going through this regularly, this is no problem. But if you look in your shelf and you find things that you bought 6 months, 12 months, 48 months, 72 months, years ago, this is not going to provide the same flavor. So buying pre-ground spices not only causes them to lose their aroma, their impact, it's also prone to mistake number 3, which is way past shelf stable or even just shelf ideal in terms of being able to deliver that flavor compound. And then finally, our 4th mistake is the nose. And so when you're buying fresh spices or stored preserved spices, waking them up with some gentle heat will amp up the flavor and the impact that that ingredient will have in your rub or your dish. I won't call it tenfold. It makes a huge difference. So the way that you do this is just by toasting your spices in a pan for a couple minutes. We don't want to burn them, but just wake up those ingredients. And this works on everything from peppercorns to hot peppers to even fresh aromatics like rosemary, thyme, sage, or anything like that that's going to go in, for example, a compound butter. Toasting your spices not only unlocks the aroma, and your nose really gets into the action and starts to enjoy things, they absolutely taste better. So now we've covered off a couple of our mistakes. Let's go into my best practices when making rubs at home. Okay, best practices time. So to help make sense of the best practices, first we need to understand the 5 basic flavors that we can all experience as humans. And so it's not just understanding the 5 basic tastes, but it's how we bring them together in balance. Now I won't have time to go through all of the things I've learned in this. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more in a future video. But in the meantime, if you're a Netflix subscriber, check out Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat by Samin Norsat, or get her book, which I picked up, and it's an absolute excellent read because it talks about how we balance these different ingredients together and can help set you up for cooking at home with no rub recipe or even no recipe. It's just starting to find how these different things complement and balance each other out. So with those tastes in mind, there are 4 best practices that I want to share that will make a big difference to how you're cooking or preparing seasonings, rubs, or your overall food at home. So that first we covered in the beginning, which is layers. So building layers. I like when I'm doing something like a steak to do an overnight salt dry brine. So that's getting the salt into the meat and helping enhance the flavor of the beef. Then I like to use a binder, so that truffle oil, and then starting to add garlic, onion, additional pepper, you name it. So adding these different layers of flavor tastes far better than it does when we mix everything together. Now, for simplicity's sake and rubs to get you started, I will share a couple of rubs that you can mix together. But if you have time, try building the layers because you will absolutely notice a difference in everything that you make. The second point is have a theme, and I'll give you some ratios to get started. But I like to start with a base, so we're call it about 70% locked in on some core ingredients, and then pick a theme. So if you're going Greek or Italian, Mexican, whatever it might be, pick a theme and try and pick flavors that complement that particular region and stick to it. Point number 3 is taste as you go. So the only way to find out if things are balanced is to use your tongue. And so don't be afraid to taste spices or taste your ingredients in terms of how things come together. We do lots of things where we are blending different flavors. That might be something like if you're cooking ribs, which are fatty, and you're spraying them with apple cider vinegar. That acid from the vinegar is helping cut some of the fat from the ribs. Or if we're doing a sear sauce on our steak and we have some mayo, red wine vinegar, salt, pepper, garlic, you name it, and we add it to that steak, it's again helping cut the fat. There's all sorts of examples that we can go in to in terms of how things come together, but it's important to taste them not just independently, but how your meal plan is coming together from an overall experience. And last but not least, number 4 is make everything as fresh as possible. And so while the temptation might be when we get to the next chapter and I share my 3 starting rubs for you to make at home is to make a giant jar of this, try and resist the temptation, because from a process perspective, it saves you time just doing it once, but the freshness is something that you lose out on over time. And so everything that I'm going to share is made for about 1 meal's worth of serving. So if we're doing brisket, it'd be enough to season an entire brisket. you might be able to stretch a little bit. Or ribs, it's going to be enough for, you know, maybe 4 or 5 racks of ribs. But we're not going to be making a month's worth or a year's worth at a time. So try, if you've never tried this, give freshness a chance, because I think it will blow you away in terms of the impact that it makes. So now that we've covered some mistakes and best practices, let's move into 3 starting rub recipes that you can make at home. Okay, I've got 3 amazing rubs that I'm going to share in today's video. There are so many that we could do, but I think this is a fantastic start. So the first rub that I'll put down in the description below is a copycat Lawry's seasoning salt. And I mention a copycat since I know Lawry's is not available in all regions. I've used this for the last year as part of my rubs and recipe, and you guys have said, I can't find it. How do I make it? So we're going to take a little bit of time on terms of how to make Lawry's, as well as how to add it into the right ratios for rub recipe number 1, which is my favorite salt, pepper, garlic overnight dry brine rub. So if I was doing steaks or a brisket or anything like that, this would be my go-to rub recipe. And it's also the foundation for almost every other recipe that I do. So we're going to start first with a dry brine recipe. The second recipe is a Memphis red rub, which is amazing on things like pulled pork and especially ribs, where we're going to get that mahogany color. And the third is my brisket bark builder recipe. And so this is things got a little bit of allspice, a little bit of coffee, and it just really helps build that bark, and it turns out stunning. It's a wow factor for not only the presentation, but also the flavor compounds. If you're tired of just kind of the traditional salt, pepper, garlic, Texas style brisket, which is my personal favorite, but you want to mix that up and go for something a little bit different, this bark builder recipe is sure to knock your socks off. And in front of me here, I have a couple of ingredients that are in all the recipes down below, as well as my pepper cannon. I bought my pepper cannon at the beginning of the year with the hope that it would save me from going out and buying store-bought rubs, and it's absolutely been true. I think I got this in February or so of 2022, and everything that you see here, I'm grinding up and adding into the recipe. So it's called a pepper cannon, but it's generally an all-purpose spice cannon. And so one of the reasons that I love this thing is the adjustability. So I can go anywhere from 8 to 60 plus mesh. So for pepper and every spice here, we can get really a fine or a coarse grind. Plus it's, as I've learned from just coffee and being a fan of coffee, one of the ingredients that we grind up is that the burr mill and the quality of the burr mill really matters. When I first got into coffee, I was grinding and chopping my coffee in the blender versus getting a burr mill which crushes and releases the oils. And this thing, hands down, I think probably the best purchase I've made in 2022. And as a thanks, since I've been including it in many videos, Pepper Cannon offers you guys a save 10% code. So I'll be sure, if you haven't seen it already, to put the link in the code for the Pepper Cannon down in the description. But I think hands down, this has done exactly what I hoped it would do at the beginning of the year and allow me to make some amazing rubs that save me money, as well as unlock a world more of flavor. So those are 3 great recipes. They'll all be down in the description with the exact amounts and quantities. And again, the advice here, even though you can mix them together, is to go for the layered approach and mix and match till you find one that you absolutely love and works for you. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to let YouTube know by smashing that thumbs up button, and let me know by hitting subscribe. And as I'm near approaching 100,000 subscribers, I partnered up with Kamado Joe to be giving away a Kamado Joe Classic Series 2 along with a bunch of accessories. All you need to do to enter is hit subscribe. So good luck. If you're already subscribed, you're in. Once we cross 100K, I'll be sure to do that giveaway. That's it for today, though. I'm James from Smokin' Dad BBQ signing off. And remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.